The night was filled with fire. The great capital city of the Vereen Empire, once shining with crystal towers and silver lights, now burned under a red sky. The enemy fleet had broken through the last defense line, and explosions echoed like thunder across the horizon. The royal palace of Assyrian trembled as plasma fire tore through its walls. Screams filled the corridors, soldiers, servants, and nobles all running in fear. Queen Siralthra, ruler of the Vereen, stood on her balcony, her golden eyes wide as she watched her beloved city fall. Her elegant wings, symbols of royalty, drooped in despair. Everything she had built, every life she had sworn to protect, was being destroyed before her eyes. Her guards rushed into the chamber, shouting orders in panic. "Your Majesty, the enemy has breached the western walls. We must evacuate you at once," one cried, his armor scorched from battle. But before the queen could speak, a huge blast hit the courtyard below, throwing flames up to her balcony. The shockwave knocked her back, and shards of glass cut across her arm. The palace itself groaned like a dying beast. Her heart pounded. "Where are the others?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The guards exchanged nervous glances. "Most of the army has fallen back. We can't reach the command center. We have to leave now." Then suddenly the sound of heavy boots echoed behind them. A tall figure appeared through the smoke, carrying a human-made plasma rifle glowing faint blue. His armor was scarred, his face smeared with dust and blood. But his eyes, sharp and calm, met hers. It was Captain Elias Ward, the last remaining human security advisor assigned to the Royal Guard. "Your Majesty," he said firmly, "we have to move. The enemy has breached the inner walls. This place won't stand for long." She blinked in disbelief. "You're still here, human? I thought you were transferred out days ago." He shook his head. "Didn't feel right leaving when the sky was burning." Before she could reply, another explosion tore through the hall. 2 guards were thrown off their feet. One screamed, clutching his leg. The other simply dropped his weapon and ran. The rest hesitated, then followed. Within seconds, the Queen's elite royal guards were gone, fleeing down the corridor in terror. Siralthra stared after them, her voice breaking. They left me." Elias turned toward her, his jaw tight. "Then it looks like it's just us now." He moved quickly, checking his weapon. "We head for the lower vaults. There's a secure passage beneath the throne room that leads to the old tunnels. If we can make it there, we can hold out until reinforcements arrive." The Queen hesitated. Her pride, her royal composure, all of it was cracking. For the first time, she felt small, powerless. But when she looked at the human standing tall while everyone else ran, something in her stirred, something close to hope. "Lead the way, Captain," she said softly. They moved through the dark halls. The palace that once glittered like a jewel now lay in ruins. Broken columns, shattered stained glass, fires burning in every room. The air smelled of smoke and sorrow. Elias led her through side passages, his every step careful but sure. He moved like a soldier who had seen too many wars and had stopped being afraid of death. At one point they passed a fallen statue of her ancestors, cracked and blackened by flames. Siralthra stopped, touching its cold surface. "This was my home," she whispered, her voice shaking. "My people believed we were untouchable. And now," Elias looked at her, his tone calm but firm, "you can rebuild a home, Your Majesty. You can't rebuild a life. Let's keep moving." She nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. The sound of plasma fire drew closer, echoing through the corridors. The enemy was coming. As they reached a broken stairway leading to the lower levels, Siralthra looked back one last time. The palace glowed with fire behind her. The crown on her head felt heavier than ever. "Why do you stay?" she asked suddenly, her voice soft. "Your own guards ran. You owe me nothing." Elias paused, meeting her gaze. His eyes were tired but steady. "Because someone has to stand when everyone else runs." The words sank deep into her heart. She didn't know why, but they hurt more than the flames. Together, they disappeared into the shadows of the stairwell, just a queen and a human soldier while the world above them burned. Outside, the city screamed. Inside the palace, only 2 hearts refused to give up. And as the first light of dawn tried to pierce through the smoke-filled sky, the legend began. The story of the human who stayed when all others fled. The stairway leading to the lower vaults was narrow and dark. Every sound echoed like thunder. The Queen's soft steps followed behind the heavy boots of the human soldier who led the way. Smoke filled the air, mixing with the metallic scent of blood and burned stone. Elias moved with calm precision. His rifle was raised, his eyes scanning every shadow. He had the quiet focus of someone who had already accepted that death might come, just not yet. Behind him, Queen Siralthra struggled to keep her breath steady. Her silken gown, once white and royal, was now torn and blackened by soot. The crown on her head felt like a curse. She had never walked through the lower halls of her own palace before. Now it felt like a tomb. "Captain," she said softly, her voice trembling. "How far are we from the vault?" Elias didn't turn around. "2 more corridors and a sealed door, Your Majesty. It's built to survive orbital bombardment. You'll be safe there." She hesitated at his words. "And what about you?" He gave a small smile, though she couldn't see it. "I'll make sure they don't follow." His voice was calm, but there was something final in it, something that made her chest tighten. She opened her mouth to reply, but the sound of heavy footsteps interrupted her. They froze. From the shadows ahead, green light flickered, the glow of Kren plasma weapons. The enemy had already reached the lower levels. "Get behind me," Elias ordered firmly. Siralthra did as told, pressing her back against the wall. Her hands trembled, but she tried to stay quiet. 3 Kren soldiers appeared from the corridor, armored and snarling, their reptilian eyes glimmering in the dim light. They spotted the human and raised their weapons. Elias fired first. Blue plasma bolts cut through the darkness, striking true. One enemy dropped instantly, the second stumbled back with a scream. The third charged forward, roaring. The human moved fast, too fast for something so wounded and tired. He sidestepped, slammed the butt of his rifle into the creature's jaw, then pulled his sidearm and fired twice. The Kren fell, its armor smoking. It was over in seconds. Siralthra's heart pounded as she stared at him. "You kill without hesitation?" He reloaded calmly. "Because hesitation gets people killed." They kept moving. Every few meters, another explosion rumbled from above. The palace was collapsing piece by piece. Statues that had stood for centuries were now piles of stone dust. Finally, they reached the vault door, a massive steel circle buried deep under the palace. Elias placed his hand on the security panel. "Still functional," he said with relief. He typed in the emergency code and the door opened with a heavy hiss. Inside was a small command room with dim lights, a table, and a few storage crates. The air was cold and still. It felt like safety, but only for a moment. Elias locked the door behind them and checked his ammo. "We can stay here for a while," he said. Alliance reinforcements might arrive by dawn. The Queen walked to the center of the room and sat down slowly. Her elegant posture was gone. She looked like a soul crushed by loss. "I never imagined the palace could fall," she whispered. "We believed our strength would last forever." Elias leaned against the wall, cleaning his weapon. "That's what everyone believes until the fire comes." Her golden eyes lifted toward him. "Why are you still here, human? You are not one of my kind. You don't owe me your life." He looked at her quietly. "Because honor doesn't end with a contract." Those words silenced her. For the first time, she saw something she had never truly noticed before, the depth in his eyes. Not just courage, but purpose. She moved closer. "Do humans always fight like this? Even when there is no hope?" He gave a tired chuckle. "Hope isn't a requirement, just a reason." There was a long silence. The faint hum of the vault door filled the air. Then the Queen spoke again, her voice soft and unsure. "And your reason?" Elias stared at the floor for a moment, then answered, "Because you're still breathing." That's reason enough. Her heart skipped. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not as a ruler, but as a person. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the vault door. The Queen flinched in fear. The enemy had found them again. Sparks flew as plasma blasts hit the outer wall. Elias stood, reloading his weapon one last time. "They're not giving up," he said quietly. Siralthra rose to her feet, panic in her eyes. "You cannot face them alone." He turned to her and for the first time smiled softly. "I've been alone before. I'll manage." The door shook again, cracks spreading across the metal. The Queen took a step forward, her voice breaking. "Elias, please, don't die for me." He looked at her, calm and steady. "I'm not dying for you, Your Majesty. I'm living for what's right." And then the door began to break. The storm was coming again, and the humans stood ready to face it. While the Queen watched the one being in the galaxy who refused to run, the vault trembled under the enemy's assault. Sparks flew as plasma bolts struck the reinforced steel door. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 storms smashing into stone. Queen Saralthra pressed herself against the wall, her golden eyes wide, watching the human in awe. Elias Ward stood calm, every sense alert, his weapon glowing faintly blue in the dim light. The first breach came suddenly. A section of the wall cracked, molten metal dripping to the floor. Kren soldiers poured in, snarling and growling, their eyes glinting with hate. Elias didn't hesitate. He fired, blue plasma streaks cutting through the smoky air, each shot precise, each movement calculated. The queen's heart raced. She had never seen a human fight like this. Her own guards had fled, yet this fragile being, small compared to the alien soldiers, moved with unmatched speed and deadly accuracy. Every time a Kren lunged at him, he sidestepped, ducked, or struck, sending them crashing to the floor. A Kren soldier jumped at her. Saralthra froze, paralyzed with fear. But Elias was faster. With a powerful leap, he slammed his rifle into the creature's chest, sending it sprawling. He grabbed her hand, pulling her back into the shadows. "You cannot stay here," he shouted over the noise. "Keep behind me!" Trembling, she nodded. She had no choice but to trust him completely. She had no one else. The palace guards had abandoned her, yet this human fought as if the entire galaxy depended on his courage. Blaster fire raged. Sparks flew from the walls. Smoke stung her eyes. Yet amidst the chaos, Elias moved with calm precision, never faltering. Every enemy he killed seemed to fuel his determination rather than weaken him. He took a step back, wounded but unbowed, and shouted, "Stay close! Don't leave me!" The queen's mind spun. She had been trained in diplomacy and war, yet here she felt powerless. She had ruled empires, commanded armies, but now she realized she had never truly understood courage until she saw it in this human. A Kren soldier struck from behind, catching Elias off guard. The blow sent him crashing into the floor. Saralthra froze, panic clawing at her throat. Without thinking, she rushed forward, using the staff from the vault's storage to strike at the enemy. It wasn't much, but it bought Elias a moment. He rolled to his feet, wiping blood from his forehead. "I've got you," he said, voice steady, though pain lingered in his movements. "Focus on staying alive." Tears streamed down the queen's face. She wanted to scream, to beg, but the words stuck in her throat. All she could do was watch the human fight for her life and hers in return. The battle raged on. Sparks danced across the room. One by one, the Kren fell until only a handful remained. Elias, breathing heavily, reloaded his rifle with meticulous care. "Almost done," he said quietly. "Hold on a little longer." The last Kren soldier charged. Elias met him head-on. The fight was brutal, hand to hand, sparks from his weapon clashing against alien claws. Finally, the soldier fell with a final scream, leaving silence in its wake. Saralthra stood frozen, her chest heaving. Her eyes darted to Elias. He was bruised, bleeding from shallow cuts, his armor scorched, but he was alive. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You could have left. You could have saved yourself." He looked at her, breathing heavy but calm. "And let them take you?" "Not my style, Your Majesty." Her chest tightened. No one had ever said such words to her, not even her closest advisors. She felt something stir deep inside, a strange warmth, a mixture of awe, gratitude, and something else she could not name. I don't understand humans," she murmured. He gave a faint smile. "You don't have to. You just have to know that someone stood when everyone else ran." The room was silent except for their breathing. The fire from above had dimmed, but the smell of smoke lingered. Dust hung heavy in the air. Outside, the city burned, but inside the vault, for the first time in hours, there was a fragile moment of peace. Saralthra stepped forward slowly. She placed her hand on Elias's arm. "I owe you my life, and my people's trust." He shook his head. "Don't worry about that. Just survive. That's what matters." For the first time, the queen felt a sense of humility she had never known. She had ruled an empire, yet she realized that true power was not in armies or crowns. It was in courage, in standing when all others flee. Outside, the sounds of destruction continued, but the vault held. And within it, two unlikely allies, one alien, one human, had survived. The legend had begun. The story of the human who stayed when all others fled. The vault was quiet now, but the silence felt heavier than the battle. Smoke lingered in the corners, and the floor was littered with scorched marks and fragments of shattered metal. Queen Saralthra sank onto a crate, her wings folding around her as if she could hide from the memories of the fighting. Her heart was still pounding and her hands shook uncontrollably. Elias leaned against the wall, cleaning his rifle with methodical care. His breathing was even, but she knew better. He had been hit several times, but he hadn't shown it. That was human strength, she realized. Something she had never truly understood. The guards she had trained, her elite warriors, had fled when the walls collapsed. But this human, he had stood, unwavering even against impossible odds. She looked at him, voice barely above a whisper. How can you be so calm? You could have left. Any other soldier would have fled. Why did you stay? Elias didn't look up immediately. His eyes focused on the rifle, the small movements of maintenance calming him like a ritual. Finally he spoke, quiet but firm. Because someone has to stand when everyone else runs. You didn't choose this war, Your Majesty, but now that it's here, someone must protect you. Her throat tightened. For centuries, the Vereen had been taught to trust only their own kind. Her guards were elite, trained, loyal, and yet they had abandoned her. But this human, a being from a distant world, one she had barely understood until now. He had risked everything, his life, for her. I've failed my people, she whispered. I was supposed to lead them, protect them, and my own guards. They left me alone. Elias finally looked up, his face calm but intense. Leadership isn't about staying safe when others run. It's about standing when no one else will. And right now I'm standing for you. The Queen's eyes filled with tears. No one had ever spoken to her with such honesty. Not her advisors, not her generals, not even her closest kin. This human, this fragile yet unbreakable being, saw her not just as a ruler but as someone worth protecting. Suddenly, a distant roar from the corridors outside shook the vault. The enemy was still coming. The sound of footsteps, metallic clashing, and the low growl of the Kren reminded them that the fight wasn't over. Elias stood, checking his ammo again. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll come for us in force. We need to be ready. Saralthra rose beside him, her pride returning in small increments. I will fight, she said softly, almost to herself. If it comes to it, I will stand by your side. Elias raised an eyebrow, faint amusement in his eyes. Not a bad idea, Your Majesty, but promise me. You'll stay behind me if it comes to hand-to-hand combat. I don't want to lose you. She nodded, a shiver running through her. I promise. The Queen felt fear, yes, but it was no longer paralyzing. She had seen courage in its purest form, and it had ignited something in her. She realized that true fear was not knowing if someone would protect you. But when someone stayed, refused to leave, refused to run, even fear could be faced. Minutes passed like hours. The smoke cleared a little, revealing the vault's walls scarred from the Kren attacks. She touched the metal surface of the door, cold beneath her fingers. How can anyone survive against such a force? She asked softly. Elias shrugged. Not everyone does. But someone has to. Someone has to stand. That's all it takes to change the tide. Her mind lingered on his words. Change the tide. It sounded simple, yet impossible. And yet here he was, proving it was possible. Another rumble shook the vault. The Queen felt her chest tighten, but she didn't move back this time. Elias noticed her stance and gave a nod, a silent message. Stay strong. We face this together. For the first time, Saralthra understood something profound. Leadership was not measured by the number of soldiers you commanded or the power of your armies. True leadership was about standing when everyone else falls, inspiring courage in the moments when despair threatens to consume the soul. She looked at Elias again, his eyes scanning the shadows, every muscle ready for action. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. He gave a faint smile, wiping a streak of blood from his face. You don't need to thank me, just live. That's enough for me. The Queen felt something warm stir inside her chest, gratitude, awe, and a growing respect for a being she had barely known yesterday, but who had risked everything for her today. Outside, the city still burned. The walls were breached in places, but in the vault, in the quiet aftermath of their first fight, two souls, alien and human, had found an unspoken bond. Elias glanced at her, voice low but firm. Rest while you can. We fight again soon. And for the first time, the Queen felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Not the false hope of armies and walls, but the quiet, unyielding hope of a human who refused to flee. The quiet of the vault did not last. A low rumble shook the walls as the Kren regrouped outside. They had tasted blood and would not stop until the Queen was captured. The human soldier Elias Ward rose slowly, checking his rifle one last time. His armor was scorched, his body bruised and bleeding, but his eyes burned with determination. Queen Saralthra watched him with a mix of awe and fear. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. She had seen him fight before, but now the stakes felt higher. She realized that if he fell, there would be no one to protect her. "Stay close to me," Elias said softly. "When they come, don't move unless I tell you. I'll handle them." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I won't leave you." He gave a faint smile, one that did not hide the exhaustion in his eyes. "Good. That's all I ask." The first Kren burst through a weakened section of the door. They came in waves, snarling and vicious, armed with claws and plasma weapons. Elias moved like a whirlwind, firing and dodging, his body a blur of precise, deadly motion. Every enemy that approached fell under his aim, yet more kept coming. The Queen's heart pounded. She could feel the heat of the plasma, hear the screams, and smell the acrid smoke. And through it all, the human fought on, relentless, fearless. A Kren soldier leapt at her. Panic surged, but Elias was faster. With a leap, he intercepted the attacker, striking it down with his rifle butt. He grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "I've got you," he shouted over the chaos. Saralthra's chest tightened. She had never felt such fear, and yet never such security. Despite the destruction, despite the odds, she knew she was alive because of him. Another soldier charged Elias from behind. He was hit, stumbling, but rolled forward and stabbed the attacker with his combat knife. Blood mixed with smoke and dust, but he did not falter. Each movement was a testament to his endurance, skill, and sheer willpower. Finally, the room fell silent, save for their heavy breathing. The Kren were down, but the battle had left its mark. Elias leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his hands shaking slightly as he cleaned his weapon. His face was pale, his clothes torn, but his eyes were still alive with determination. Saralthra approached him slowly, her wings drooping with exhaustion. You could have left," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You could have saved yourself." He looked at her, a faint, weary smile forming. "And let them take you?" "Not my style, Your Majesty." Tears pricked at her eyes. She reached out, placing her hands on his shoulders. "I don't understand why. You are not one of my people. You are not even of this world. Why risk everything for me?" Elias met her gaze, his expression calm, almost gentle. "Because someone has to stand when everyone else runs. You deserve a chance to live, to lead, to rebuild. That's reason enough." Her chest tightened. She had ruled empires, commanded armies, and yet she had never understood the meaning of true courage until now. It was not in grand speeches or massive legions. It was in standing firm when all others fled and protecting what mattered, even at the cost of life itself. "Promise me something," he said, his voice soft. "Promise me you'll survive. That you'll rebuild. That you'll remember this. Not as the night we fell, but as the night a human stayed." She felt her lips tremble. "I promise," she whispered. Her voice was choked with emotion, but firm with determination. Elias nodded as if satisfied. "Good, now rest while you can. We fight again soon." She wanted to stay by his side to comfort him, but she knew the vault was their temporary sanctuary. She sat on a crate, her hands trembling as she touched the walls scarred by the Kren attacks. The human had faced death countless times tonight, and had survived unbroken. For the first time, Saralthra understood the weight of his sacrifice. She realized that courage could come from the most unexpected places, that hope could survive even in the heart of despair. And in that moment, she felt something she had never allowed herself to feel. Trust, complete and unwavering. Outside, the ruins of the palace still smoked, the fires glowing against the night sky. Inside the vault, amidst the shadows and dust, the Queen and the human shared a quiet bond. Words were few, but their unspoken connection spoke louder than any speech. Elias looked at her one last time before settling against the wall, exhausted but alert. "Rest now. When they come, we face them together." And for the first time in centuries, the Queen did not feel alone. She realized that the true strength of her empire would not be measured by soldiers or weapons, but by courage, by honor, by the human who refused to flee. Tonight, she understood the meaning of heroism, and she would carry it with her, always. The vault shuddered as the Kren regrouped outside. This time there was no hesitation, no pause. The enemy had realized that the queen and the human soldier had survived the first assault. They came with rage, with numbers, with everything left in their arsenal. Plasma fire cracked against the steel walls, sending sparks dancing across the dim room. The air smelled of ozone, smoke, and fear. Elias Ward stood in the center of the vault, rifle in hand, body tense but unyielding. His armor was battered. Blood streaked across his forehead and arms. Yet his eyes burned with the same fierce determination as before. Every muscle in his body was ready for the fight, every sense alert to the slightest movement. Queen Saralthra clutched a rail near the wall, her golden eyes wide. She had followed him through the previous attacks, but now her chest tightened with dread. She knew this assault would be worse, stronger, deadlier, and if Elias fell, she could not imagine surviving without him. "They're coming," Elias shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay behind me, Your Majesty." "Do not move until I tell you." She nodded quickly, though her hands shook. She wanted to fight, to stand beside him, but she knew her place was here. To live, to survive, to honor him. The Kren broke through the outer barricade. Dozens of them poured into the vault, snarling, claws extended, weapons blazing. Sparks flew, walls cracked, and the floor shook beneath their assault. Elias fired relentlessly, plasma bolts cutting through the enemy with deadly accuracy. Each shot was precise, controlled, measured. 1, 2, 3. They fell before him, yet the numbers seemed endless. A Kren leapt at him from the side. He was hit in the shoulder, the force throwing him backward against the wall. Pain shot through his body, but he pushed himself up, gritting his teeth. His rifle slid from his hands, and he drew his combat knife, slashing with fierce determination. Saralthra's eyes filled with tears. "No, not him. Please, no." The human moved like a whirlwind, fighting off 3 attackers at once. His body was bleeding, exhausted, yet he did not falter. Every strike, every dodge, every shot screamed one thing: "I will not let them take her." One of the Kren tackled him to the floor. The blade grazed his side, cutting deep. He gasped, but a roar of defiance tore from his throat. Using the last of his strength, he spun, slammed the creature to the ground, and stabbed it with his knife. The queen ran forward instinctively, placing her hands on his shoulders. "Stop, please. You're wounded. You'll die." Elias smiled weakly, blood trickling down his chin. I told you. I'll stand. When everyone else runs." She felt her chest tighten as tears streamed down her face. "You don't understand. I can't lose you. Not after everything. You saved me. You saved my life." The human gasped, breathing heavy. Yet he reached out to touch her hand. "You will live. That's all. That matters." Another wave of Kren surged forward. Elias fired his rifle one last time, plasma bolts cutting through the air with deadly precision, but his strength was failing. The room was a storm of smoke, sparks, and death. He fell to his knees, clutching his wounds. The queen knelt beside him, her wings wrapping around him as if she could shield him from the world. "Don't die. Please, stay with me," she cried. He looked up at her, eyes filled with pain but soft with a strange, unwavering calm. "Promise, you'll rebuild. Promise, you'll live, even if I can't." She shook her head violently, tears streaming. "No, I won't let you die." "You're my protector, my hero. Stay with me, Elias. Stay." He coughed, blood staining his lips, yet managed a faint smile. "You don't need me." "Alive, just remember, a human." "Stayed." The Kren began to retreat as reinforcements from the Human-Vereen Alliance arrived, breaking through the remaining enemy lines. They fired relentlessly, forcing the Kren to pull back. The vault door shuddered and groaned as the invaders fled. Saralthra held Elias in her arms, tears falling freely. He was weak, his breathing shallow, but alive. He had survived. Against impossible odds, he had stood firm. "You did it," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. "You stayed, like you promised." Elias smiled faintly, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. I told you." "Didn't I?" For the first time, the queen realized that courage was not just about armies or weapons. It was about standing when everyone else runs. It was about protecting what mattered, no matter the cost. And in that moment, she understood the depth of human bravery. Outside, the city still burned, but inside the vault, amidst the smoke, the pain, and the ruins, a bond had been forged. One that could never be broken. Elias had kept his promise. The queen had witnessed it with her own eyes, and the story of the Human who stayed when all others fled would live on forever. The morning sun rose over the ruins of the Vereen capital. Smoke still drifted from the shattered towers, and the cries of survivors mixed with the distant roar of retreating enemy ships. The palace that had once glittered like a jewel now lay in smoldering ruins, but at its heart, one story of courage had survived. Queen Seralthra stood at the entrance of the lower vault, her wings folded tightly against her back. Beside her, Elias Ward leaned heavily on her arm, his wounds bandaged but still aching. He had